we go. Hello, folks. Welcome. Thank you for being here today. We're pleased that you could join us. My name is Leah Watkiss. I am the chair of the Collaborative Network to End Exploitation, and I am the Ministry Director of the Ministry for Social Justice, Peace and Creation Care of the Sisters of St. Joseph of Toronto. Collaborative Network to End Exploitation, or CNEE, is part of the work of the Ministry for Social Justice. As we get started today, we would like to acknowledge the land that we are on. Folks might be joining from places across Turtle Island. Out of deep respect for Indigenous peoples who have cared for these lands since time immemorial, we acknowledge that we, CNEE, live and work in Takaranto, the traditional territory of many nations, including the Anishinaabeg, the Haudenosaunee, and the Huron-Wendat, and is now home to many First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit, and the Williams Treaties, signed with multiple Mississaugas and Chippewa bands. We affirm our desire for right relations with all Indigenous peoples built on respect and reciprocity. This work includes critically examining the ways Canada's settler colonial legacy systematically benefits some people at the expense of others. In the context of our work, we seek to redress these harms by pushing for policy changes to help correct this imbalance of power. And with CNEE, we also like to do a labor acknowledgement at the beginning of our gatherings. So we acknowledge the labor and sacrifices of poor and racialized workers on the lands known as Canada. This nation's settler colonial history includes, among others, the exploited labor of over 200 years of enslaved African and Indigenous peoples, Chinese workers forced to pay a head tax to come and perform work considered too dangerous for Canadian workers, agricultural and other migrant workers indentured to their employers with closed work permits. These and other violent practices allowed Canada to accumulate wealth and power. Canada continues to profit from the historic and ongoing exploitation of poor and racialized people. CNEE is committed to redressing this legacy. So as I mentioned, I'm the chair of Collaborative Network to End Exploitation. So we're also known as CNEE. We are a collaboration of faith-based organizations, secular community groups and individuals working to raise awareness about the spectrum of exploitation of human beings. Our goal is to inspire action for structural and societal changes. We are committed to working from an anti-oppression framework in which we strive to be supportive allies, to root our work in the voices and experiences of people with lived experience, and to ensure that our actions do not negatively impact other marginalized groups. And so we're thrilled to have you here to learn more about this exciting project that we are collaborating, CNEE is collaborating with Mixed Company Theatre on. I'm going to say a little bit more about CNEE and the work that we do, and then I'm going to introduce our partners at Mixed Company Theatre and give them a chance to talk a bit more about themselves and the great work that they're doing and how we're going to come together for this production. So I'm going to show you a video that was created here in our office with CNEE. That does a really good job of encapsulating the issues and the work that CNEE is trying to do. Here we go.
Most people choose fruits and vegetables to buy based on the conditions of the produce itself. Is it fresh, organic, local? But what about the conditions of the workers who grew them? You might assume that when you buy Canadian-grown produce, the workers are safe, fairly paid, happy, but you would be wrong. Canadian agriculture, like many sectors of our economy, relies heavily on the labor of the temporary foreign worker program. Economic inequalities force millions of migrants, mainly from the global south, to seek livelihoods elsewhere. Recruiters promise good wages, fair working conditions, and even permanent residency. So workers take out loans, pack their bags, and come to Canada filled with hope. But when they arrive, many discover they've been tricked. Working conditions are unsafe. Living conditions are crowded, dirty, and in disrepair. They face mistreatment. They work from dawn to dusk and are paid a fraction of their promised wage. Closed work permits exclude migrant workers from the basic right to change employers, making them easy targets for exploitation. Workers who raise complaints are regularly fired and deported, driving them and their families into poverty. Employers hold extraordinary power. But there is hope. Migrant workers are organizing resistance for their basic human rights. Stand in solidarity with them. Ask questions about the food you buy and the services you use. Support local migrant worker groups. Tell politicians to grant migrant workers permanent resident status. Participate in our migrant workers' experiential exercise. Together we can uphold the rights and dignity of migrant workers.
So wanted to give folks a quick overview of Canada's Temporary Foreign Worker Program, or TFWP. Canada operates 4 programs through which migrant workers with temporary immigration status are delivered to fill jobs in the low-wage stream. There's the caregiver program, the stream for lower wage occupations, which would be folks who work at places like Tim Hortons, the agricultural stream, and the seasonal agricultural worker program. So those are 4 different ways that temporary foreign workers in the low wage stream can come to Canada. So there are some differences in these programs, but overall, the process is generally the same, that an employer has to apply and they pay for a labor market impact assessment, which says that they are unable to hire a Canadian to fill the role, the position that they're hiring. And once that's granted, then a migrant can apply for a work permit. They get screened by Canadian Border Services Agency, and before the worker comes to Canada, there must be a signed employment contract between the employee and the employer. So there are certain conditions that are understood by the worker will be met when they arrive, but when they arrive, often those conditions are not met. And because of our closed work permit system, they're not allowed to go and work in another place. So they're stuck. And the processes that they have to try and complain or to try and get compensation are very complicated. They are time consuming and they are very inaccessible for workers, which means that there's a lot of exploitation that takes place through this migrant worker program. So overall, we have this cycle of migration here in Canada where we have a labor shortage or a labor need, and we recruit people to come from overseas. And they get there, they arrive, they work, their permit expires, and they go back to their country of origin. Now, what's important to note about this migration cycle is that the jobs are permanent. There's a permanent need for people to fill these roles, and that's why we have a constant cycle of folks coming in on an ongoing basis. So the jobs are permanent, but the migration status of the people doing the work is only temporary. Canada says you're good enough to come here and work, but you're not good enough to come here and stay. So we see a lot of intersections between in this work with our Indigenous reconciliation work, because a lot of these systems and patterns go back to the fact that Canada is a settler colonial nation. So a lot of our systems are embedded in, all of our systems are embedded in that system, and that's reflected in our migration system as well. There's also a lot of connections between climate change and global capitalism, and which leads to push and pull factors that lead people to seek work internationally. For the most part, these migrant workers would love to be able to stay in their home country and make a living there, but they are unable to do so, and that's why they end up coming here as migrant workers, because they're not allowed to bring their families with them. They have to leave their families behind. So people generally only do that because they feel that they don't have another choice. There's also connections to understanding where our food comes from. A lot of Canadians who aren't from rural communities are very disconnected from the food that we purchase in grocery stores. And if we think at all about the food supply chain, there's a lot more awareness around environmental sustainability and trying to buy local and support local farmers, but there isn't awareness or understanding about the labor conditions of the folks who are picking that produce here in Canada. So what we try to do with CNEE is help folks to understand the elements of exploitation that exist in our labor migration system and how to address these cycles by pushing for policy changes. So we're actively looking for opportunities to engage on this issue and to engage people in a real life embodied way. So this is what has led us to develop things like our migrant worker experience, which I'll say a bit about in a minute, and to this really exciting collaboration with mixed company theater. So the migrant worker exercise is a live role-playing in-person exercise where participants take on the role of being a migrant worker themselves. So they start in their home country. We explore some of the push and pull factors that lead them to come to Canada. They have to cross the border and they arrive on a farm, and they find that their working conditions are not what they were expecting or what they agreed to. So they have unsafe housing, there's wage theft, they're isolated, they're abused emotionally and verbally and physically. But through this exercise, we do also learn of the strength and resilience of these migrants. And folks are empowered to support migrants' movements and the movement for change. These presentations can be done, so if you're like a high school teacher, we can come in and do it over 2 classes. If you're in post-secondary and you have like a 2 or 3 hour window for your lecture, we can come in and do it in 1 class. We can do a 1-day retreat where you can bring your students to the Mary Ward Center in Toronto, and we can run the workshop and do sort of a fuller day's experience looking at themes of Christian social teaching, Catholic social teaching as may be relevant for your students. And what we're hoping people will conclude and realize from our workshop and from the work we do is that this system is designed to trap and exploit poor and racialized migrants for as long as they're needed before discarding them back to their home countries. Although they come to Canada with status, many of these migrant workers will fall out of status unless they accept degrading, demeaning, and exploitative scenarios. Most Canadians, we find, are unaware of this exploitation, and that results in there being no political will to make any changes, because the only people who are lobbying the Canadian government are the people who have a vested interest in maintaining the status quo. So what we're trying to do is raise this awareness, and we are really excited that Mixed Company Theatre wants to join us in this work. So Mixed Company Theatre facilitates workshops and presentations of forum theatre, a UNESCO-recognized educational tool to engage, educate, and empower audiences in schools, communities, and workplaces. Since becoming a globally recognized center of forum theatre in 1992, MCT has worked with many communities, including youth, newcomers, seniors, homeless youth and adults, employees, and many more. They are dedicated to helping people rehearse for real-life situations of oppression, thereby empowering communities to address these issues and make strides towards a better world for everyone. And so I'm going to hand things over now to our partners at MCT.
Good afternoon. My name is Simon. I'm the Artistic Director of Mixed Company Theatre, and want to welcome everyone. We are really excited about collaborating, and I'll just explain a little bit about Theatre of the Oppressed. Theatre of the Oppressed comes from Brazil, where a man called Augusto Boal started to work with the community and develop little scenarios about the challenges that that community was experiencing. And it's a specific kind of theater called forum, where we create the challenges, and that's the first act, where we show you some of what is called the anti-model, the negative experience, and then ask the audience, after watching the first part, and before they even do that, we ask them to look at what they could change. What is it that you can do differently? And in the second act, what happens is the audience, the community, comes up with options, alternatives, possible solutions to the situation. So we work on actionable items. What we would like to do is work with the community of migrant workers and develop a theatrical presentation that is going to be facilitated by a joker. The joker is the facilitator. And what we do is play a few games with the community, the audience. We try to really make people feel comfortable so that they can speak up, they can say something, whatever it is. And we have that crucible so that people can enjoy the entertaining piece of theater, because even when it's a negative situation, we do try to find humor, because laughter is very important. So the idea would be to look at that first act, ask the community in the second part to really come up with what they think could be done. And by that, we develop a whole circuit of actionable items. What the purpose of that first part is to provoke or catalyze the audience to want to change what they have seen. Now, Mixed Company has worked with, as Leah explained, many communities. And what we really work on is coming in with the idea of giving voice to that community to share what it is that is going on, and then develop ways and means where we can look at the power dynamics and change them and come up with ways to change them, not just because sometimes people feel while you're sitting in an audience watching that, oh, that's easy, I can fix that. But what we do is you come up and rehearse for reality. You come up and show us what it is that we can do. Examples, we did a show dealing with bullying for schools, and it was called Showdown. Showdown was seen by over 375,000 students and educators. Why? Because it tapped into a whole discussion about bullying, about the realities of bullying, where we try to really look at options that are not magical. The bully isn't going to change. The bully is a person that wants some power. And we start to look at allyship. we start to look at ways that we can create allies, not just change the person, the victim in this case, but the allies, so that the allies can do something. We play games with the participants first, and then we also play games with the audience, the community, to make them feel like they're all part of it. So we have clapping games that we play with the audience before they begin to speak up. What we try to do is warm up voices by doing just imitation sounds. We could do some examples here, but I think what we want to do is really explain that this process works. When we worked with the homeless, for instance, we started off by working with the adults and then realized that the youth are a totally different concept. And we had to work with both the adults and the youth and developed a tour circuit for hostels and shelters where the homeless could look at their peers and see what the challenges were and relate to them, because it was coming from them, not from us. We are just the guides and the artists to give voice to whomever we work with. I think that's a little bit of introduction to Mixed Company. If there are any questions, we'd love to answer any questions that people may have. Thank you. I guess I did a great job of explaining everything.
I think so, Simone. Did you want to do any kind of demonstration?
Well, I think what we can do is look at, we'll play a game and just see what people could at least understand what the game is. What I'm going to ask you to do is follow this finger. So as we develop with your head and body, just follow the finger. There we go. Okay. We're back. And so that's one game. Another game is crossing. So what we're going to do is we are off screen and we can come and just, everyone could be very creative, coming in, out of the scene, walking across the scene, going up and down. So what we do is just get people to move around and develop it so that every one of you can try it. So I guess what we'll do is start off with, oh, we have Leia's up. Why don't you cross the screen in any way that you want, and we'll imitate you.
Okay.
And then we'll get somebody else to do it.
All right. I'm going to do the old Austin Powers.
Okay. Audrey, why don't you do one? Miranda. Stevie. Sarah. Okay. Yes.
What about Mrs. Kenny?
Oh, okay. All right. You got it. So what we do is have fun while we create the show, and have fun while we look at how to change some of the concepts and have the actionable items. Now, we play these games so that people feel comfortable and enjoy. I mean, we want the movement. Sometimes we just talk about the situation. So what we want to do is really have fun and develop it. And we develop it with everyone. So I hope this gives you a little bit of what we do live. But we, during the pandemic, learned how to do it on Zoom. So very adaptable and flexible. Thank you, Leah.
Thanks so much, Simone. I'm so excited for this collaboration and to see what comes out with the production. So I'm gonna just bring in my screen sharing again to just go over, give people an idea of what the project is. So the idea is that there will be a collaboration between Collaborative Networked End Exploitation and Mixed Company Theater. Our goal is for this MCT production to take place in the fall of 2025. So like a year and a half from now. We are planning to launch the production, hopefully in Guelph, with it being the agricultural center of Canada. We want to get things kicked off with a festival to celebrate the wonderful and many inputs of migrant workers to Canada. We'll have a run in Toronto. We'll have a run in Guelph. Now, if you're not in one of those cities, we have the ability to do runouts. So like if your school or if your university or if your local community theater is willing to host us, we can get all of the production in a van and drive out and do a matinee show and come back. We're also hopeful if we can get the funding and we can get all of the pieces in place that we could maybe do a tour of Southwestern Ontario. So going to places like Leamington and Niagara, places that are big hubs where there are a lot of migrant workers present. So yeah, schools will be able to book and host a production, or maybe a couple of schools want to get together and host a production. Between now and then, CNEE is available to run the migrant worker exercise with your groups. So with your classes, with your community groups, with your church groups, whatever. We can come out and bring our facilitators and run the migrant worker exercise. So that will introduce some of the topics. We'll get some interest building. And will help us to build the audience and the interest for the Mixed Theater Company production. So there are a number of ways that you can get involved and support this. You can sign up for our mailing list. You can host the migrant worker exercise. We have a podcast, an 8-piece documentary on the plight of migrant workers in Canada. So you can give that a listen and share that around. You can follow us on our social media. You can donate through Canada Helps. You can connect us with local groups you think might be open to working with us. So these could be local migrant worker groups or like local social justice groups, community groups, church groups, faith groups. If you hear of any relevant grant opportunities, please send them our way. And if you know of any possible venues or hosts for either the migrant worker exercise or the theatrical production itself, you can let us know. So our website is cnee.ca. You can email us at cnee@csj-to.ca, and we'll send all of these links out to folks so that you can click on them yourself and choose what level of engagement you're prepared for right now. Yeah, and other than that, are there any questions that folks have about Forum Theater, about MCT, CNEE, about the production, or anything else that anyone from the organizing team wanted to add that Simone and I maybe forgot to touch on?
I'm just curious, Mrs. Kenny and Ibrahim Ning, what grades you teach or what school board you're in?
I teach 9 to 12, and right now I'm with a grade 10 drama religion class, so we're doing social justice. And I'm at Wellington Catholic, Our Lady of Lourdes at Wellington Catholic. And they were just asking, are we going to do this? And I'm like, that would be cool. So maybe, yeah.
Thanks for joining and for explaining.
Ebe is on our team here at CSJ.
Oh, sorry. I thought they were a teacher. Okay, sorry, I apologize.
Yeah, so other than that, we will be sending, we've got a document that we'll send you as a follow-up that kind of gives a little overview of what the project is and gives our contact information. So please let us know. Just let us know what you think of the idea and how we're pitching it. I'm finding it hard to describe to folks in sort of the brief elevator pitch. So if you have any other thoughts or ideas of how we can get further out, connect to other folks, we would love to hear from you. Otherwise, anyone have any other closing comments or thoughts before we wrap up? No? All right, Chi Miigwech, thanks so much for your time, and have a great rest of your day.
We had a question. I'm so sorry. What was your question? The student had the question, do all schools collaborate, or does each school do their own thing? I guess when you do, I don't know if they understood the part that you would come to us.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we have there's two options. We can come to your school and run the migrant worker exercise, and that would be just your class. And then the MCT theater production, we could bring it to the school, and probably there would be a lot more like grades, maybe all of a certain grade or all of a certain class would come and participate, or if we could get connected maybe with 1 or 2 other schools in the area as well to kind of bring, to make it possible for us to bring the production out. We would love to do that.
We have 3 Catholic high schools in our board, so that would be something that would be fun. Okay. Any more questions?
I think the question there about the involvement of the students during the production in that second act are the ones that would participate and try to look at the situation and come up with ideas. So that's what we are hoping the students will do.
Perfect. Thank you for explaining that. So when you came to visit, they would get to be involved. Fantastic. Oh, great.
Yes, and it would all be interactive.
We really like the Zoom games.
Oh, good.
Perfect. Gives you a good taste of what there is to come. So yeah, we're really excited to connect, and we look forward to hopefully hearing from you to come out and book the migrant worker exercise and get to meet your students in person and start building this relationship so you can be involved in the movement and involved in the production.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for your time. Thanks
Thank
to
you.
all of your class for joining us today. And yeah, once again, thank you and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.